I'm privileged to have Brian Kraemer. He's a musical director for a local church. He's also a gay man who is a Christian, something he struggled with throughout his entire life. He's now 47 years old. And also the pastor of St. Augustine of Canterbury Anglican Church, Peter Hansen in Chico. They are both on the show to discuss homosexuality, whether it's a sin, whether it's not a sin. Obviously, Father Hansen believes it is a sin, but he has been very respectful. Likewise, Mr. Kraemer has also been very, very respectful, but he takes a differing view, and we're continuing our discussion. And one of the things that came to mind, and I'll talk, if I could start with Brian real quickly, I remember I knew a couple when I lived in Las Vegas. They were a great couple, and it was just tragic. The man got paralyzed from the waist down and could never engage in sexual behavior. And because of that, the wife couldn't go on and wound up leaving him. And I remember my father once told me, he said, you marry a woman who it won't matter to you whether you have sex with that woman, because there's something might happen to you in your life where you'll never be able to be engaged in sexual behavior. And you want to be able to make sure you have a connection with that person mentally and emotionally, because on the totem pole of things that are important in a relationship, my father would say it's like one of the, believe it or not, he said it was really low. It wasn't that important because there were so many other things in a relationship that mattered. And what would you say if somebody said, what difference does it make whether, do we place too much emphasis on sexual gratification? And if we maybe took less emphasis on that, in some ways, all relationships might be a little better off. Not that it's not important to have that in a relationship, but it's probably not the most crucial element in a relationship. Do you hear where I'm going, Brian?
Sure. And I would agree that it's not the most crucial aspect of a relationship. At the same time, I think that when people feel attracted to one another, that they want to engage in a physical relationship, whether it's holding hands or kissing or showing any level of affection leading up to orgasm. So I think that it is a natural part of our desire to be close to another human being. At the same time, I think that we do make too much of sex, not just among gay people, but all people. I just want to share a quick story about a dream that I had where Jesus hugged me, and he just simply held me, and every single cell of his body was conscious, and every single cell was conveying, I am completely yours. And that embrace, I'm always remembering that when I'm doing things throughout the day, because that embrace was far more intimate, more meaningful to me than any sexual experience could ever be or will ever be.
That was no dream either.
No, it was a dream, but I believe it was real.
I agree. That's what I'm saying.
And it was the most intimate experience one can imagine. So I do think we overplay sex very much in our culture.
Father Hansen, any comments on that?
Well, no, I think that's beautiful. I want to go to someplace and do it as quickly as I can, and because I hope we've established a level of trust with Brian and myself that, and I have heard him fully talk about his side and his life and his struggles and his earnestness, I think, and his faith. And I'm impressed and blessed to hear all of that, or at least very, I'm compassionate on that. Not so much for him. He's a very sensitive, aware, and awake guy. But for those who maybe take his position and haven't heard or seen all this and feel that the Christian community and the Christian world is just against them and hateful and fearful, I've walked through this life 62 years, and I've seen some things, and some things really scare me and probably would scare my fellow guest here. Back in the 60s, late 60s, I was in Berkeley. Going to school, going to UC Berkeley. Oh yeah, all the way. And I mean, they'd announce a big major speaker for a pro or anti-war rally at Sproul Plaza, and so we'd all hear about it and all go down there to see this anti-war rally and this famous speaker. And the first thing we would get was Cesar Chavez and La Raza and boycott lettuce and grapes. Okay, that was interesting. And then we'd get Black Panther and somebody else talking about black liberation and black power. Then we get a gay and lesbian group come up and give gay liberation speech, and then it would be something else. And an hour and a half would go by, and we didn't hear anything about the war. And I get a little frustrated and impatient. I'm hungry, it's time to go to dinner. And then finally the guy gets up and talks about the war. Well, the message I was getting was that there's an interwoven agenda here that must all be accepted as the new way. You know, the whole culture was being rocked at that time. Pro-abortion was another part of that package, this sort of rainbow coalition of issues, that if you're going to be a good person, you're going to accept all of this stuff and you're going to adjust and change to this. And it was said with a pretty good deal of force and even anger. And, you know, we're all kind of this. It made me feel a little bit like I'm not sure I want to swallow all this pill. This is enormous. You know, what you're asking us to change is huge. And what the gay community was telling us was just let us do what we want to do in the bedroom alone behind a door, and we'll be okay with it.
Brian, Father Hansen was making the point that sometimes people in the gay community are really forcing it, that we have to accept, to be good people, we have to accept a lifestyle that people in the Christian community feel is sinful. And I'll dovetail briefly. I spoke the other day with a pastor here in town who said that those who feel that it's a sin use the word homophobic, which really angers a lot of people who are Christians and who believe that homosexuality is a sin, because they'll say, well, we don't have a phobia. We're not fearful of homosexuality. We just think it's wrong, and to be labeled like that is very bothersome. And I think that people in many Christian churches will say, as Father Hansen was saying, that's your lifestyle, but don't castigate us because we think it's a sin. How do you respond to that?
Well, I would love to respond to it, but first I want to ask Father Hansen, what specifically is it that gays and lesbians are doing that you feel like it's being forced down your throat? What is it what are we physically doing or verbally doing that you're asking me to respond to?
Sure. Well, I didn't get there yet, so
Okay. Right, okay.
I'm talking about 1968. But the first question or the first request was, why don't you leave us alone in the bedroom? Why are there laws? Why are there sodomy laws where we'll actually be arrested and imprisoned for our sexual conduct that's done between consenting adults? Which was a reasonable question, and it resulted in the getting rid of all the sodomy laws across the country. And so, therefore, private sexual behavior between consenting adults became a legal entity. That wasn't okay, because then the next step, we were treated to gay parades in big cities where literally lewd acts are being carried out in public and nothing is being done to protect the public from things that they were looking at. It became a civil rights issue as to whether you must hire a homosexual person, even if you have some moral issues about that. It became a civil rights issue to force, or to ask the courts to allow the adoption of children to gay couples and so forth. It became an issue as to whether the Boy Scouts of America was right or wrong as to its prohibition of having gay scout leaders overseeing small boys, and on and on. I mean, and there are political machinations behind all this that both force this forward and also cloak some of it from us. And at one point or another, we just said, hey, enough is enough. We consented to the fact that you have a right in this country to do as you will, even if we don't have a high regard to it. But now you're getting into our backfield with the homosexual marriage issue that's so hot and still embroiled. California voted to define marriage as a man and a woman only, and yet that's being fought in the courts. Our governor, then Attorney General, rewrote the proposition so that it was a ban against gay marriage instead of a definition of marriage, which it was proposed to be, trying to overthrow it even before the vote. This feels a little bit like not just dealing with the gay community's own issues, but asking us to take on a lot. You redefine marriage, you redefine everybody's marriage.
And I think it's important. Marriage was something that was founded by the church, by God. Yeah. He's the creator of marriage.
Yeah. So, I mean, there isn't one agenda. There just seems to be a continuous attempt to erode our particular view and lifestyle. And so at one point or another, we get our back up and we say, hey, wait a minute. can you please be reasonable? We've allowed that you've got a lifestyle, and we are trying very hard not to be nasty or evil toward you, but this sounds like there is no end to it.